Hello, welcome to the show. It is so good to be back, and we appreciate everybody being here with us. So, how's everybody doing? How are you guys? How you doing, Lynda?
I'm doing okay. I mean, as okay as can be expected. It's been a really busy time at my house. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good. So how about you, Trevor? Can you hear me?
I think Trevor's still on a leg.
Oh, I think maybe.
Might be on a little bit of a lag, so I see everybody's lips moving like really, really fast, and things trying to catch up. So,
How are you
I
doing?
love technology. Things have been fine around here. Just doing good. Just busy with kids stuff and work and Western Idaho Paranormal and running some public investigations out in Gooding at the old tuberculosis hospital, and got another one of those coming up here this next weekend. So yeah, but we're chugging along and doing great. So glad to be back on the show.
So, I got a message yesterday from Peter, and he said, so I guess you guys are doing another, they're planning another visit in April of next year, 2026. And he said, you're going, whether there is no no's, there's no maybes, there's no, I will think about it. He goes, you're on our way. You're going to be kidnapped. So that'll be the end of that. I'm like, okay. So I am finally going to meet you in April of 2026 there, Trevor. Meet you in person. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's about time.
I know. So I was laughing and basically, and I was, what's that?
Need to figure out a way to Shanghai Lynda too.
I know. I think so too.
I know. I'm too far east, but you never know. I mean, stranger things have happened. So keep your fingers crossed.
You could come visit me in Alberta.
There you go. Right. There's a plan. There's a plan. We could really get Pete, because what we could do is not tell Pete that I'm coming.
Right?
And then he has to kidnap both of us.
Exactly.
Right?
I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Brilliant idea.
Yes, I agree.
I agree. I love that. I was like, I thought that was brilliant. I was like, okay, we will do this. I will. There's no more. What do you call that word?
Yeah.
Putting it off or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Procrastination.
Avoiding. I call it avoiding me, but
it was not avoiding.
No, never.
It was not avoiding.
No.
Yeah. So I've been sick this week. I don't know if you guys can tell, but and so it was interesting. Actually, I was at a market last week, and I was a vendor at a market, and I have to tell you this story because as content creators or artists, whatever you want to call it, we're always like, I know me personally because I'm a public figure doing my readings and stuff like that. You guys are public figures in your own right, and there's so many people out there that are dealing with this on a regular basis. We get people that copy or imitate or whatever it is, right? Oh.
Yeah, booted out.
Trevor's like, I don't agree. No, I'm just teasing. No, I think he's having internet. He's probably fixing his internet.
Yeah.
So we have to deal with that, a lot, like on a regular basis, like somebody pretending to be you or your profile or whatever, these idiots, and all that is, it's literally thievery. Like, it is thievery, and it is the lowest form of humanity, I think, right? He just said he's gonna log out and come back in.
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, it is such a low thing. So here I am at this market, and I work on my art, right? Like on the stuff that I do. And I've been working on it for a while to perfect it, and it takes a lot of work. It's not one of those things that you just wake up. And and so it was interesting. There's two things that happen, and one of them was there was this one guy who had some really beautiful art, and I was like, wow, like it was the same stuff that I do. It was resin, right?
Right.
But it was like this looked, I don't know how to describe it. It was very beautiful, but there was a but, and I wasn't really sure what the but, you know what I mean? And then he kept saying, "Oh, I've been doing it for a year. I've only been doing this for a year." And I thought, there's no way. Like I have never met a resin artist that could have that amount of work, craftsmanship in a year. Like this was extraordinary.
Wow.
Extraordinary type of stuff, right?
But it was suspect because there's
what's
no
that?
way. It was suspect, in other words.
Yeah, it was very suspect, right? Especially for somebody that's been doing it, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now, and I could probably create a similar quality of that, but but there was just something about it, right? We're back, hi. So then,
We'll try this again. Hopefully this works. So.
Okay. Crossing our fingers. So then, anyway, then when he was unloading, and there was a few people that were very suspicious of it. It wasn't just me. Like it was people, not even people that were and then somebody said, look at the boxes that he's packing all his stuff into. And they all had stamped made in China.
Oh no.
I was like, wow. So, you're trying to pass this off as your own stuff. Again, that's just thievery, like as far as I'm concerned, right?
Absolutely.
And there was like some clocks and stuff that had the Oilers logo, like the actual, and I was like, you're not allowed to do that. Again, that's a copyright. You can make it orange and blue, but you can't have an actual logo. That's like, you just can't do that. So anyway, I was like, whatever. Anyway, so then somebody later on on the last day of the market, one of the organizer came to me and she says, I don't know if you know this, but there's another lady selling dragon books on the other side of because it was markets. So I make these dragon notebooks, and
yes. Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And so she said, but she's on the other side of the market because there was two different halls and I said, really? And she goes, yeah. And it's really weird because it's eclectic. Like she doesn't make resin. She's selling like knickknacks. She was selling she went and bought my book and resold it for double the price. Or we actually don't know if she had it on for sale for double the price. But what she did is once everybody heard that, like market people are very like, close. Like if somebody's pulling that kind of crap, people stand up for one another, right?
Yeah.
And so there was like, as soon as she said that, there was like several people that were like, we're going to go look. And, but the thing is that somebody must have already gotten to her and told her to, so she either sold it or she put it away.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
so
right.
I know, I was just like, wow, like this is like, so, when we hear about people doing this, guys, and again, as artists or as content creators in any form, we have to deal with this all the time. And it's just so, I thought for sure this would be something that at least, you could be original with, like it's your work, right? So
yes.
Yeah,
that's not right.
Yep.
It's not. It's so not. But anyway, it is what it is. Hi, Spooky. It's good to have you. She says, I'm a little bit behind, but so excited to meet you. Gooding is amazing. I can't wait to meet you too. I'm looking forward to this. So, yeah. And it gives me some time to prepare.
It does.
I'm not very good with like leaving my home. So I love vacations, but I always go with like my son or something. So to leave him for like a long extended period is like, it's like my house. What's gonna happen? My cat. I can't leave my cat.
I feel that. I
I
really
know.
feel that.
I was in Calgary for 4 days in May, and I was like, my cat.
Yes.
Well,
I
we have an investigation dog that comes along, so you'll get to meet
Okay.
Cowgirl, and
Okay.
maybe that'll help. And there's a couple cats that run around on the property too. So
Okay. So if I just grab one and haul it around with me,
there you go.
you'll be fine. Right? Can you imagine? What's that howling?
I can imagine.
Got it on tape, and I'll be like, it must be a haunting. It must be. There's Kathy. No, shh, just be quiet.
Oh my God. I'll fight you for it, Kathy, if I can.
Yeah. Because Cowboy will give all the cuddles. So that will be good. That's what I need. Okay. I'm good with Cowboy.
Nice.
So tonight, we are talking about what happens when a location is haunted. Does that taint the location forever? Like, here's a good example. And I think this is a little controversy though, because we really don't know if it was haunted or not. But we're going to bring up probably the most famous one is the Amityville Horror, or the Amityville House, right? And that's probably one of the most well-known locations, I would think, or top 10 anyway. And according to the legend, I think everybody knows it. Whatever, the Lutz family. Were they the ones that were killed? They were the ones that were killed, right? Or were they the ones that moved in? I can't remember. They were the ones that moved in.
They moved in.
They moved in.
Family, the DeFeo family. They're the
DeFeo,
ones.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
They were the ones that were killed. The Lutz family moved in, claimed that the house was haunted, etc., etc. And and then there's been families, like there's a family that I think has been in there for about 20 years now, and so and they're like good. I love the fact that they changed the windows, though. They did change the windows of the house to make it less recognizable. And I think that's brilliant, right? But so obviously, if the house had been haunted, I would say that no, it doesn't stay tainted forever. But I do feel that it has to do with the energy that is being put into the home, or the residence, or the location itself. What are your guys' thoughts?
I completely agree. I mean, I was kind of thinking about this as well. I didn't really think about the Amity House so much, but I was thinking of places like Gettysburg, places where there was a lot of death, a lot of, a lot of fear and negative emotion, and things like that. When I went there, I didn't really pick up on the negativity of it all,
Right.
but it was more a very somber, very not hollowed area. It seemed very peaceful, but at the same time, you could just, it was just thick with spiritual energy where, you could practically visualize, the battles that were going on. When it comes to homes and things like that, I agree. I think it entirely depends on the type of energy you're bringing into the house. We go into homes all the time that feel negative, and but a lot of times when we get family members out and we're in there by ourselves, that negativity starts to drift away, so it makes you wonder if it's more of a location that's the problem or if it's the people. So.
Right. I agree. Here's, speaking of Gettysburg, I was going to ask you, Lynda, because you were in Scotland, is that right? Yeah, right? You were in Scotland?
Yes.
Did you go to Culloden? Did you go to the battlefield at all, or?
No, we didn't. We actually went to where did we go? We went to Greyfriars. We went to Edinburgh Castle. Wandered around the city, that kind of thing. So it was quite.
Okay.
It was a quick trip because we had a million places to go to. But I mean, you could really feel the energy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you were tapped into it, that's another thing. And
Right.
again, you know, when you talk about places that might be tainted, it's
Yeah.
amazing how many people live in places that are fine and everything seems fine until they're told that someone's passed away there. Right?
Mhm.
I mean, how many cases have you worked where that's been the case, right? It's like, ooh, I didn't know this house had death in it, but now that I know, I'm seeing like shadow figures, or my dog, like I'm noticing my dog is looking in the corner more frequently. So you kind of, right? It's like, is it the people, or is it truly the residual energy in a location, or is it an active energy in a location as well, right? You don't know. Is it residual, or is it an actual active, you know,
Yeah.
communicative energy there?
Well, and on the flip side of that too, I mean, I think there's also times where you might live in an active location that you don't realize it, and you perhaps have been rationalizing some things away or just not paying attention to it, and then somebody lets you know, oh, by the way, this happened here, and then you're like, oh,
That
and
explains
then
everything.
you start looking for it, right?
Yes,
And so I mean, there's that aspect of it too, I suppose.
So
absolutely.
Spooky is saying the Demon House in Indiana. It was torn down by Zach Bagans. That house was haunted, and I always wonder what happened to that haunting due to how bad it was. Huh.
That was the one that he did the movie on. If, I'm
Yes.
thinking where I was. That was the last straw for old Zach Baggins and me. I was done after that show. I sat through that thing, and I was fine, with it until like the end where like it's all built up and he's locked himself. Spoiler alert, everybody, if anybody's gonna watch this, but he locks himself into this freaking house, right? And he's in there, and then like you hear these footsteps come in, and then like the camera's on him in his room, and he's yelling and screaming and chucking rolls of toilet paper and towels or whatever he can get his hands on out the door, and then it just ends. Just ends. That's it. Doesn't show what happens. Doesn't show anything. Next thing you know, he's outside the house and they're bulldozing it.
That's
Yeah,
weird.
I was just like, it
Yeah,
was terrible.
that's not
It
right.
was terrible. Yeah, and then he just bulldozed the house, which is a freaking piece of history. That really ticked me off too. But
Families are so traumatized. I don't even really know anything about the house. I know that's horrible. I probably should know about it, but
Yeah, I don't know
I don't
anything
know.
about this either. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I'm not there's I'm not a Bagans girl.
you're not a fangirl? What?
I'm not a fangirl. There's two investigators that I'm not fans of. And he's definitely one of them.
Yeah, but get this. If Josh Gates had gone into that house to investigate, I would have been
I would have
all over
watched. I would have been all over that. Yeah, because I like Josh Gates.
right?
I'm a Josh Gates fangirl too. So.
I knew that about you, Trevor.
That's why we love you, Trevor.
It showed on your face.
You could turn me.
Well, okay, so in Ontario here, I mean, you all know the whole Paul Bernardo thing, right?
Yeah.
And the horrible things that were done to these poor souls, right? And that house that everything happened in, that house was torn down as well. And one of the reasons that people said that it was torn down, of course, was because they didn't want it to be a tourist location. But then you got the other camp that said, imagine if that house had been resold it would have had horrible residual energy in it. There's no way that anybody could have ever lived in it. So you've got those two camps, right? Tear it down because you don't want it to be like a tourist attraction because of the horrors that happen there. And then you got the other camp that goes, yeah, well, I couldn't have lived in there. I mean, imagine, that's horrible. The death and the torture and all of that. So yeah, right? Tainted for sure.
I think something like that would have been definitely tainted. But you know, even if it wasn't, so Sparky's just saying I would have watched it if it was Jason Oz. It would be boring but good. Yeah, you know what? I like the way Jason can definitely do some good reporting on his channel. We can because that's another house too that actually Jason's been talking about. We can bring that up in a minute. But what was I just saying? Oh yeah, Paul. But you know, the mental, I think it would be more the mental. So whether it was really paranormal or not paranormal, I think just knowing that you're in a home where all of that torture and murder occurred would be mentally challenging on a person.
Absolutely.
Like just on your soul, you know, as it is. Like I don't, even if there was no haunting going on, I think just just all of that would be enough. But it's interesting that Sparky actually brings it up. It was because that's a conjuring house,
right?
So Jason's been. I don't watch a whole lot of it, and I haven't really paid. I'm not a huge drama person, so, you know. But I've caught little snips here and there, just mostly because it's like shown up on my Facebook page or something like that, and I've been like, oh, okay, and then I've kind of caught a little bit of it. So the idea that I got was, or the basic rundown that I have is that the Conjuring house, it was, I guess the owner that was there was renting it out. So, you know, if anybody's ever seen the movie The Conjuring, the house is real. The Perron, I think, was it Perron family? That was
Perron
it?
family, yeah.
Yeah. You know, they did go through quite a lot of, you know, challenging paranormal activity, you know, in that home. And then it was, you know, I don't know exactly how many times it sold, but the basic idea of surrounding it right now is that the person who currently owns the house has been renting it out to investigators. And then all of us, and she's renting it for a lot of money. It's not like, you know, it's not a cheap amount. And then they'll be in there for like a night or something, and all of a sudden she'll be like, no, I don't like the way you did this, or I don't like the way you did that, and you guys have to get out, and you're kicked out, and she keeps all the money, and she's creating all kinds of bugaboo.
Yes.
She's accused Jason of a lot of things. Sparky's like, yeah, oh yeah, that was a drama fest. I hope the owner gets some help. She definitely, like, there's definitely some help that is needed for that person. Oh, yeah. But it turned into a huge thing. But then you think, okay, so was that mental issues, or was it because of the house? Did the house or was it a combination? Did the house contribute to?
That's true. Did it emotionally or psychologically affect the owner? That's another thing. You're absolutely right. You're right. You don't know.
Well, then you got to wonder if there's more of a natural cause to that, where it's, you know, some sort of fungus or chemical or whatever, you know, that can, especially if it's going from onto different people, you know. But here's the thing. I mean, allegedly that house was supposedly cleansed. You know, so this kind of begs the question that I've often wondered, especially when I've investigated places like the Sumter Bed and Breakfast, where what was that gal's name from Ghost Mine? Ghost Mine. Yeah. Anyway, Ghost Mine, they did a big thing out there. For a lot of years, they ran a series out there, and they had a medium with them, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she cleansed the B&B because they had some spirits in there that were really aggressive, and kind of negative. So here's the thing: what we know about spiritual cleansings is that basically they only work if the owner, people that are living there are going to believe that it works, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like one of those mind over matter, battle of wits. That's right. It was Amy from the Dead Files. That's right. Thank you, Spooky.
Who did what for? Oh,
Amy was the one that did the cleansing at the bed and breakfast.
oh,
So anyway, the original owners that were there, Jay and Barb, they worked a lot with Amy. They had a lot of trust in Amy and what she did, and things got a lot better.
right.
Then Jay and Barb no longer are there. Their son runs it now. And I don't know that he shares that same level of trust and faith in what Amy did. So the question I have is, after you cleanse a place and those owners leave and somebody else comes in, can those spirits come back?
Yeah. So, okay, there is a property. I can't blanket all of this. I don't feel I can blanket that, but I do know of a property that I have cleansed for a friend of mine. And there was a lot of negative energy on the property itself. Okay. And some of it was, because of mistreatment of Indigenous. Some of it was just the owners of the previous homes had been, abusive. They kind of grew up in an environment with their own father that wasn't the happiest, all of that. But she loves the property itself, right? It's just that the spirits can be extremely active, but it's the land. It's not so much the house itself. It's like more within the land. And so what we've done is, we have cleansed it essentially, right? But the thing is that happens is because of the family environment outside of herself, like external family members that come to the property are very negative or very drama ridden human beings that like to cause a lot of crap for absolutely no reason. And the one of the people of the family is very abusive to his wife. And so what happens is, it's not so much that it's making them come back. I think it's that the barriers are pretty much breaking down, and it just feels like you're starting to open that door again. You're starting to let those cracks type of thing open. Now, these spirits are not particularly the ones that we block off are of course negative, but there are some really good ones there. Like there are some really, really nice spirits, like very, very gentle. And they kind of, I know it sounds weird, but they help with the process of the whole, the whole cleansing, right? So when you do have to cleanse it again, they sort of help along with that. And it's really a beautiful experience, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that it can definitely, I think that they can definitely come back. Or are you just sort of opening a doorway to allow other things to appear? Maybe it's not the same kind of spirit.
And that's a possibility too, because I honestly don't really know where these spirits go after they're evicted. If they just kind of go and they hang out at the hotel for a little while until things calm down and they move back in, or what, I was thinking, I was kind of reminding myself of some of the facts, but way back when there was an Idaho governor, Stoneberg, that was assassinated here in the city of Caldwell, where I live, and the assassins stayed in a hotel here in Caldwell that was called the Saratoga, and the Saratoga burned down. I want to say it was like the late 90s, and it was arson, but up until the point that it burned down, it was actually well known for being considered one of the most haunted places in the United States. You know, I have since wanted to try to get out there and take a look at that site. It's kind of a parking lot now, but they're talking about building a new hotel there on that site. So
Right.
I'm wondering, again, what keeps a spirit or these feelings, these negative emotions? Is it the four walls that is surrounding the place? Is it the land itself?
Yeah.
I think it's usually the land, but I'm wondering if there's been a good distance of time.
Mm.
I wonder if some of that energy can dissipate.
I think that some of it can, but I also think that a lot of it is just ingrained into that land. It's like a memory.
Yeah.
And I do think that you can have active spirits that remain on a particular tract of land, like for however long they wish to be there. I mean, for example, we did that investigation of Prince Edward Heights in Picton. And that, and I know I've got a picture of that that I had sent
Yeah,
to
which one is it?
that sort of weird looking building. It looks like oh gosh, it was a military base, and it was
Are both of them from the same one?
um,
There's a hallway, and then
yes, there's a hallway, and so that's from the inside of this place. And the base, it used to be a military base, and then it was a hospital for, they used to call it like the mentally disturbed, and it was for adults and children, and there were multiple deaths there. There were reports of abuse. A couple of paranormal groups, one in particular, that's a TV group up here in Canada, and they have a show called The Other Side. And
I've seen them. I like them.
They're great.
Yeah.
They went in there, and one of their female investigators felt very compromised. There was a lot of energy, a lot of angry energy, and all of that. Well,
they're an indigenous team, isn't that right? Right?
They are.
And I really like their show. Actually, they've got a really good they've got a really good the medium on there. Like, they're very professional. I like the way they work.
Yeah, they're amazing. And they went in there, and the same kinds of things happened to them as happened to us when we went in there. But that whole site has been torn down, and they're building a subdivision there. Wow. So you say to yourself, all right, well, where does that energy go? Is it still there? And I mean, there's this disclosure thing, right? When you buy a house, I know in Ontario, it's probably the same, maybe in the States, I don't know. But you have to disclose if there was a death on the property, if there was a murder or anything like that. You have to disclose that. But do you have to disclose when you're building a subdivision that, oh yeah, by the way, it was built on like this kind of asylum where there was a lot of things that went on and a lot of death and a lot of abuse, and you have to do that?
I don't think that that's the case. I know that law is particular state by state. I think in Idaho, you're supposed to disclose if there's a death on the property. There are some states that make you disclose if the location is haunted, or allegedly haunted, which I think is interesting. To me, that'd be a big sell point myself. So, anytime if I put a for sale sign on anything anymore, it says might be haunted. Open it. But I
have a little ghost holding the sign.
And the thing about it is like, was the developer aware of what was on that land before he developed it? You've all seen that TV show, The Curse of Oak Island.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know how much of it is real and how much of it is just whatever, but let's say that 50% of it is real, and they're digging down hundreds of feet on this island, and they're coming up with shards of pottery. What the heck? Where did that come from? How did that get there? We don't know half of the history of what happened in the places that we live. So you take what was that Poltergeist house,
Exactly.
the movie that was, and I don't know that the house was actually built on an Indian burial ground. I do know that they used real skeletons in the movie, in that,
Yeah.
which was pretty cool and probably freaked the heck out of the actors, but she found out. But you just don't know what was there before that, and that's kind of the thing I think we run into in a lot of these locations that we investigate. That one comes to mind. We investigated a museum sometime back. It was called the Indian Creek Museum here in Caldwell. The Historical Society asked us to come and investigate. And I asked them, well, are there any claims? Has anybody had any experiences? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, well, why would we? I mean, there's nothing happening. I mean, so we went in there to investigate, and I'll be darned if we didn't come out with a bunch of evidence.
Really?
It was the weirdest thing, and nobody had ever had any experiences there. And so it was a dentist's office for
Wow.
I mean, I was kind of blown away, but I don't know what was there before that. Who knows? It's interesting. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. They've got what's that? Sorry, Trev?
Oh, spooky. It was she put the real human skeleton. Yeah, it was kind of an interesting deal because I went and toured this place before they'd asked us to investigate it, because I kind of like my local history, and they've got a lot of really good stuff in there. But I walked into this one room that they had a cadaver table with a skeleton laying on it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I walked and I got a little closer, and I was like, that's a real skeleton. That wasn't plasterized. That's real bone. And so I went and talked to the people there, and they're like, oh yeah. I said, why do you have this real skeleton in here? And they said that when they were going through all the stuff that was in that building, they were going through the storage closet and found a coffin in the storage closet, and there was a skeleton in the coffin.
But don't they have to report that? Like, doesn't that have to be investigated?
So it turns that it was from this club called the IOOF, the International Organization of Fools. I think that's what it stands for.
Of what?
And International Organization of Fools.
Okay.
What I think it stands for. And they're just kind of like this big club, like the Eagles Club or the Elks Club here in the States. And I don't know what all they do, but apparently their initiation ritual involves a real skeleton. And I don't know how they get their hands on these skeletons, but they do. And whenever they pack up and leave, they apparently don't take the skeletons with them. They just leave them there for whoever else shows up to deal with. So I don't know. But anyway, yeah, if you want to see a real skeleton on a cadaver table, you can come. When you come down to the States, Lynn, you two, maybe we'll take you over there and I'll show it to you. So.
No kidding. So there was a place here. I shouldn't say there was a place. It is a place. So it's called the Charles Campbell Hospital, or it was called. This is a picture of it.
Nice.
You can see the fence around it there. So this is when it was closed. Okay. And what happened is, now I don't know the full story. I was going to investigate it a little bit more today, but to be honest, I just really wasn't feeling good to do that. So, but basically back, I think it was like, from what I understand is that a lot of the indigenous people that went there for TB, they were put into a separate ward and were actually treated quite horribly.
Right.
Is the understanding, and a lot of people passed away. A lot of people died. It was shut down in 1996. This hospital. Interesting enough, my first daughter was born there in 1991. So, and you know what? Here's the thing. It was a creepy hospital. Like, I wouldn't say like I had any paranormal experience or anything like that. But I was definitely, I was in a ward of 4 by myself. And so it was really kind of creepy to be in there with like 4 empty beds. And I could always swear that there was somebody coming into the room, or that there was somebody, but you don't think about it. Like, this is, I mean, you just have, it's not, you're not thinking, oh, the house of the place is haunted. Like, I never really thought about stuff like that. But here's an interesting thing is that I actually used to run a security guard office. I was the office manager for a security company. And when they hired guards, we used to put them, into hospitals because they would have to sit with the patients. And there were some people that would eat spoons or whatever the hell they do. You know what I mean? So they were strapped down or whatever they needed a guard for in those rooms. And we would have guards come back the next day. And I remember this one guard came in and we had just put him out there, and he was new, and he was like, I need to go to another site. And I'm like, well, we don't have one for you right now. Like, I can't just take somebody off of another site and switch them. If you want, you can stay off of work until, another site opens, but I can't just switch you around, right? Like, it's either no work or work. And he goes, I'm not going back there, so I'm just quitting. And I was like, okay, and but there was like one story, this was interesting, where one of the guards was in there. And I remember this guard came in the next day, and he was pure white. Hey, he was just like, I can't, like, there, we couldn't get guards to watch there. It was almost impossible. But he was sitting there and he was telling me this story. And as he's telling this story, he's got his coffee and he's like,
oh no.
I just shaking like that. And you're like, okay. But I guess he was watching over a patient, and somebody walked into the room, went into the bathroom, and was in there for a while. And he was like, this is a private room. Like, you're not supposed to be coming into this bathroom. Like, this is not safe, right? So, he doesn't have keys to it, but the nurses do. So he's trying to, get the attention of this guy and the whole bit. This went on for a while. Went and got finally one of the nurses, or called for one of the nurses because you can't leave the room. Got one of the nurses in, and she opened the door. Nobody's in there. Water is running. And she's like, oh, that's just whoever his name was. I can't remember the name of the person now. Oh, that's just so-and-so. They come in here all the time. This happens on a regular basis.
Wow.
And he was just like, yeah, okay. So like I said, the next day he came in and he was like, no, we're not doing this anymore. I'm leaving. But we had a lot of incidents, from that hospital. Now, the interesting thing is this is actually one of those hospitals that paranormal. So as a paranormal team here in Edmonton, everybody would say, oh, we want to go check out the Charles Camsell. And you're like, it's been closed since 1996, honey. Okay. Like, there's nothing in this hospital, and you can't get in because, like I said, it had those fences around.
Yep.
And right. But the thing is, the place was full of asbestos. It was like, had holes in the floors. Like, it was a health hazard. Right. And you would hear these people that were like, oh, but I broke in and I went in, and you're like, yeah, okay. All right, sure. So did the guards catch you on your way in or on the way out? Because, and it was actually funny because the guards were like, go on in. Like, they didn't say that, but they wouldn't do anything. But on the way out, we gotcha. Yeah. We gotcha, right? If something happens to you in there, not our problem. We didn't. That's on you, buddy. You know what I mean? But on your way out, you're God, right? But it was interesting. You'd always hear these people, because we used to do the paranormal group meetings like you have, and you'd always have that one that one person who thinks that they know it all. They're the big mouth of the, well, we broke in there last week, and you're like, oh, yes, I'm sure you did. Yes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It was, but anyway, so now they are bulldozing it down. I don't know if they've done it already, to be honest. There was conflicting, and I'm too lazy to actually drive over there. Like, it's not very far, but it's not a place that I go. But they are building a seniors complex there, so that's going to be interesting.
There
And
you go.
we did go on a couple of walk-arounds, like around the property, like around the fenced area. And when you get close to the hospital, because it is a big area, like you've got the parking lot, you've got the hospital, and the hospital itself was quite huge. It wasn't a small hospital. As you can tell by the picture, like, again, it's quite a large, hospital considering.
It's massive.
Yeah, but when you got close to the hospital, you could definitely feel some wackadoodle energy. I wouldn't say it was like, I wouldn't call it negative particularly. I'm sure that there was negative in there.
Well, I mean, let's face it, there's so many places that are tainted, like, quote unquote,
Right.
because I mean, you've got, hospitals, you've got churches,
Yeah.
you've got grave sites, you've got battlefields, right? You've got all of those potentially tainted locations. But the issue becomes, for example, I did some research on some people actually do live on ground that used to be a cemetery. And there are a couple of places in Scarborough, Ontario. There is a tract of land that used to be a cemetery. The cemetery was, everybody was exhumed and the bodies were moved. But during the exhumation, there was a lot of stuff that happened. So they didn't really contain the area very much.
Right.
Dogs that were literally digging up bones. They were digging up people. They were putting half of a person in one. It was just horrible. Honestly, Trevor, it was awful. And there's actual.
I was just imagining a dog showing up at home, got this bone in his mouth. And the owner's like, "What you got there, boy? What you got there? Is this a femur?"
Honestly, there's a picture of an actual newspaper article where it even looks like Bedlam. Like, it absolutely does. And it's a cemetery in Scarborough. And honestly, some of the stuff that went on, it's like, what? That's like desecration.
But why did they even move it? Like, that's what I don't get. Like,
they wanted to build on the land. So a developer bought it. They literally dug up everyone, tried to move everyone, and they eventually thought, I guess, that they got everyone, but they didn't get all of the headstones. They put all of the names on this sort of four-sided headstone, and they thought they got everybody. But I mean, honestly, what happens in that case, right? I mean, I'd be a little ticked off, wouldn't you?
Oh, for sure.
Or he ended up with somebody else that I didn't even know. But there's also a park.
Or half of a body.
Well, that's right. That's right. And Fido might have my leg bone somewhere. Who knows? But there's a park in Kingston, Ontario, that's actually called Skeleton Park. And that's an interesting one because, again, they wanted to develop that. But the problem was that particular land was a cemetery, and the bodies that were buried there, because of the composition of the land, were not buried that far underground. And they were terrified that if they dug them up, because a lot of them were plague ridden, so they had, cholera and all kinds of plagues at the time.
Right.
They thought that by digging them up, they would perhaps reactivate whatever happened to kill these people, whatever plagues were killing them. So
Right.
really what they did was, they didn't do that. They developed it into a park. It's still there to this day. And people claim all kinds of things. They claim to see all kinds of people walking around. I mean, this stuff happens. Like, it really does. And honestly, you're right. We don't know what we're walking on, because who knows, right? There were pioneers that came, and people passed and they buried them as they were and where they were, and they kept walking. So who knows? You could buy a house, right?
Even Indigenous, like, tribes moved for, you know, across the lands. And I mean, you know, they had issues with other tribes. So there was battles all the time, all across, you know, Canada and United States. Like it wasn't, you know, it wasn't just, you know, people were just pretty much buried, and then the tribe would get up and leave and whatever, right? Or, you know, if the whole tribe was slaughtered, well, they were buried there, or they were just left there and eventually buried over, right? Or they're, you know, they soaked into the soil or whatever it was, right? But it's and same thing with pioneers and everything, you know.
That's it. You don't
Well,
know.
you know,
Yeah.
you talk about pioneers and, you know, the Latter-day Saint, early Latter-day Saint community that came over from like, that were settling in Utah. There's stories about a couple of these groups that got late starts and got in the Wyoming winters, and they were ill prepared for that. And a lot of them, like over half of them, died on the trail, and they were not able to bury their dead because the ground was frozen. And so they would just kind of try to stack rocks and keep them. But they talk about stories where they could hear the wolves, you know, going through and taking these bodies to scattering to who knows where,
Yeah.
I actually went and visited and spent some time out in this place called Martin's Cove in Wyoming, where a lot of this happened. And I can tell you there's not a single bit of negative energy out there at all. If anything, it is one of the most peaceful places that I've ever visited. Very hallowed, you know, and I think it just really depends on how that land is treated. You know, in some ways, you know, like, yeah, they talk about, like, in Meridian, where one of our fire stations are. I talked to the guys that used to work out there before the road, Franklin Road, was widened. Right across the street from the fire station is Meridian Cemetery, and they had to dig into that cemetery to widen the road. They talk about seeing excavators coming through, and they didn't get all the coffins apparently, and they'd pull a coffin out and it was all rotted, and the corpse would fall out of the coffin, you know, and things like that. You know, and so a lot of guys think that place is haunted too, just because they saw that. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I think if you can have blessed ground, I think you can have desecrated ground as well.
Oh, for sure. I
know,
think so.
But I don't know if it's so much the land itself that's tainted as it's more of like some pissed off spirits or something that are there. So
I actually got an update on the hospital. So a friend of mine, Cinder, she says I'm just gonna put up what she said here. I've been there as I provide nail care to the new senior lodge, and I've seen the new condos that were once the Charles Campbell Hospital, and construction is continuing. Most of the hospital was demolished and the grounds were searched for burials. Construction was extremely delayed, and it looks good from the outside. The seniors' lodge is lovely and well constructed. It is on old hospital grounds, no subdivision off. That's good. Yeah, that's good to know. Like, you know, I mean, I don't know if they're experiencing any hauntings or anything like that, but it sounds like it was taken good care of anyway, you know? So,
Yeah, true. But you know yourself, I mean, there are so many people that never experience a haunting in a
absolutely.
location
Yeah.
that has, you know, previously been occupied by people that have. So if you are more sensitive to that kind of energy or those frequencies, then you will experience that. But a lot of people just never do, you know.
and some people are just really good at ignoring things as well.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, my
you know,
husband's really good at ignoring the dishes, but doesn't mean they're not there,
exactly.
right?
But your husband doesn't have that magic sink that you
No,
put your dishes in at night, and then the
no.
next day you come to and they're gone. They're already cleaned and put away. I have
Yeah,
one of
you
those.
know, it's amazing, isn't it? It's just amazing. Yeah,
It's magic.
it's magic. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know, you were talking, Trevor, about whether or not, you know, that whole cleansing, right? Whether they would come back or not. We had a conversation at the last paranormal meeting about the fact that, all right, so let's say you have an area that has been cleansed, right? So all the active spirits have been moved on. But what about the residual energy? Because that's something totally different. So how do you cleanse or remove residual energy? And that was a really interesting question. And I know that in the past, when we've had locations with residual energy, we've invited feng shui people to come in and kind of, you know, defer, or not defer, what's the word, like change the energy,
Right.
deflect the energy. So if some people feel that something is rushing at them through the front door, they might put a mirror there, and then that kind of, you know, deflects the energy away and changes the energy. So you can have that tape recording, as it were, that residual energy in that location. But if you change the energy and change the flow of the energy, then you can kind of help that. But can you ever get rid of residual energy?
I think you'd have to figure out what the energy is being stored in, because I mean that's my understanding of a residual haunting. It's not really spirits at all. It's just that recording of that energy being set off under certain circumstances.
Right.
You know, so I like the example of those old, like, early 1800 mirrors, the mercury mirrors.
Yes.
That was a big source of hauntings for a long time, because they are basically a giant battery that can store that energy. And then once you remove the mirror, a lot of the problems went away.
Right.
You know, or are you built on on something like a limestone deposit, or, you know, do you have some form of running water underneath your house, or is it the four walls themselves, something that's stored in there? I mean, I think that, yeah, I think if you can remove the medium, then I think that you can remove the residual energy.
Right. And that might be hard to do, especially if you've got limestone in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
How
Yep.
do you mute the energy so that it's much easier to live in that particular
Right.
location? And that's
And I think
hard.
the idea of trying to redirect that energy is kind of an interesting one. So,
Right, right. And that's what they do. I mean, feng shui people, they deal with, you know, the negative energy or the sha energy, and they try and inject like the chi energy. And there's all these cures for all of the negative energy. And I think there's a lot of credence to that. And I think that as paranormal investigators who deal with people who might have residual hauntings, I think it's a really good idea to really research that and kind of play with that, because a lot of people have that, you know, they have that problem. They don't have active spirits in the home. But I mean, how do you deflect that energy? I mean, especially, for example, we always say, okay, well, if you're doing renovations on your house, that can really kind of get those spirits moving again, right? So a lot of people have all these things happening. But the point is, too, if you have residual energy, and let's say you renovate a house with residual energy, that might actually cure whatever's happening in
it
your house.
definitely could. It definitely could, you
Yeah,
know, and because it won't, it's not gonna, it shouldn't have, it shouldn't worsen the energy, because it's not reacting so much to the changes like an intelligent haunting would. Because the intelligent spirit's aware of the changes going on, and it's getting upset because it can't do anything about it. And so it starts to act out. Whereas, you know, the residual is just going to do what it's going to do until whatever's triggering that energy is disrupted.
exactly.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating stuff, isn't it?
it's super interesting. It is really, really interesting. You know, we have this, we've caught it a few times over in Gooding, and maybe you'll get a chance to hear it when you come down. But we've heard it up in the attic, we've heard it down in the basement, but there is this blood curdling scream
Oh,
that we've
wow.
caught a few times now. I'm pretty convinced that it's a residual thing, because it doesn't ever happen on command, but it's happened enough where it's like, oh my gosh, that was really weird.
Wow.
You know, and it just kind of, and so people who have those things happening and don't understand what's going on, it can
Yeah.
be really scary.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, and in a lot of cases though, and we can educate, you know, and tell them what it is. And yeah, it's unsettling, it's unnerving, but once you kind of know what it is and that it's not going to hurt you, and it's just there, it's kind of like an annoying smoke detector battery that goes off every once in a while.
Yes,
You just like,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's just
Yep.
So you can hear it with your ears. It's not just over electronic
Yeah.
equipment.
Yeah, you can hear it, but we catch it both. So, but it's usually disembodied. So, yeah, well, yeah, Spooky says, well, we haven't got through in the public investigations. And I am and I'm not, because I mean, it's not super loud. And sometimes when we have a lot of investigators, they are. And so it might be happening and we're just not hearing it. I don't know. You know, or yeah, I don't know what triggers it, honestly, but it is pretty interesting. Spooky's heard it a few times. I've heard it a couple times. It's definitely unsettling when you hear it. I mean, it's not a good scream. So
I
it's
can imagine.
yeah.
God. Yeah.
So,
Well, thanks guys for watching. And we will be back next week, we hope. Don't you say that.
We will.
But
We will.
we will be back next week. We thank everybody for being here. Thank you so much for watching and just being a part of our show. Please remember, if you are not subscribed, please remember to subscribe. And you know what? If you can share our channel, we would greatly
tell your friends.
Tell your
Tell your friends.
share them to your page, share it to tell your friends. You know, just let them know to come and be a part of our our small little family here. Because we want to make it a big family. So thanks everybody again, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.